Hi there, welcome to No Nonsense Whiskey. My name's VinPF, and on today's episode we're going to be heading back up into the heights of the teens, and we're going to be checking out a Ledaig 18-year-old. Now this one here is the batch 3. It first appeared as an 18-year-old in 2015. That one was just called the Ledaig 18. And then they released a batch 2 and a 3, and finally we're on the 4, although it doesn't say batch 4 on anymore, it just says Ledaig 18-year-old, and that's pretty much what's been available rolling forwards. Now the Ledaig 18 itself, although this one here is no longer available unfortunately, it's in a lovely wooden box as was the previous 2 batches. Now it's in a cardboard tube, which I'm okay with, it's lovely to have something like this, but the less packaging that's involved with whiskey, in my opinion, the better, because it would make the whiskey a little bit cheaper to buy, I think, rather than having all this excessive packaging. That said, I'm just like everybody else. I do love a good box, and obviously I'll keep this probably for a long time, and I imagine someone in the future will have to throw it out of my study after I've left this mortal coil. In any case, massively diverging there, but it's had, as I said, 4 releases now, and they've gone from 2015, and I think 2 and 3 came out in 2016, and then maybe the latest release is 2019. So it's been around for a couple of years now. Very interesting stuff. Now, the thing that is really cool about the Ledaig brand name is it's not actually a distillery. It's the Tobermory Distillery on the Isle of Mull, and Tobermory is completely unpeated. Ledaig is heavily peated, and it's roughly 50-50 of their production, depending on the year. Year on year that might change, but yeah, roughly it's kind of 50-50 of the unpeated to the peated stuff. And to differentiate between the two, we've got the Tobermory Distillery Tobermory brand as the unpeated, and the Ledaig stuff is the heavily stuff. So that gives you a kind of good idea if you're new to that distillery of where you might lie, if you're into the peat or not. Personally, I think both of the brands are very good, although I haven't actually covered any Tobermorys on the channel yet, but I should do in the near future. Now, I actually came about this in a bit of a strange way, because I didn't buy this. I swapped it actually with a good friend called Billy Saunders, so thank you very much, dude. And I had a Cotswolds Whiskey World Whiskey Forum, something like that, and I tried a sample of it, and it wasn't kind of the usual Cotswold vibe for me, so I didn't open my bottle. I just sort of left it on the shelf and thought maybe one day I'll get to it. And then it just happened that I think maybe a couple of times me and Billy sort of talked about maybe passing it over to him, because he's a big Cotswolds collector. So one day I just sort of said to him, what have you got? And we'll just do a straight swap. I'm not looking to make any money on this thing. And he had this sitting around, which in fairness, it probably at the time of the swap, and definitely now, would have been worth a little bit more than the asking price. I paid 75 for the Cotswolds, and this would have been around that £75 mark when it was first released. Obviously it's limited release and it's named in batch number, so it's pretty easy to say which one this is from, but there's not really anything else we can say about that in particular. It probably is worth some money, but that's not what I'm about here on the channel. I opened this straight away because I'm a big fan of Ledaig, and everything I've tried from there is awesome. So had to be opened, had to be drunk, had to be shared with you, even though, as I said, you're probably not going to be able to get this, and I'm certainly not recommending anyone go looking for anything on the secondary market. If you've got money burning a hole in your pocket, then by all means go and have a look for this thing, but I don't condone that sort of action. You can pick up the current batch for around that £75–80 mark, and I imagine, although I don't know for sure, I imagine they're going to be pretty similar in flavour profile, because they're all ex-bourbon barrel, moving on to the whiskey. They're all ex-bourbon barrel, finished in, as they say, Spanish sherry wood as a finish. So we don't know how long that finish is, but I guess that's neither here nor there. A couple of other things on the label. The percentage is 46.3%, and it does say non-chill filtered on the actual label, but it doesn't say no added colour, which is an interesting choice. I imagine it isn't added colour, but I can't be certain because it isn't on the actual livery itself. But it would seem a massive shame to add colour to something like this after you're going to so much effort with the presentation. But again, I can't be sure. Let's get onto the whiskey and see what we've actually got, shall we? I'll talk a little bit about the colour because I don't know for sure, but it's got a really nice kind of coppery colour to it. If it is natural colour, it is a very nice colour indeed, but if it isn't, so be it. Let's get onto the nose and see what we've got. Now, before I get into it properly, I should say as well, it does benefit from being out on the open for a little bit. I've had this in the glass now for probably about half an hour or so. And from the point of pouring to the point of now, it's really chilled out and opened up a little bit. But for me, obviously we're getting peat and smokiness, but it isn't kind of like ashy, it isn't dirty, it isn't boggy. It's got a kind of really nice, almost barbecue-y element to it. It's kind of like standing next to a barbecue that's kind of cooking some meat and the smoke's coming up. It's that kind of smokiness. Almost sweet with a kind of touch of salt air about it, a bit of brininess. There's some dried fruits there that from the kind of sherry influence, but I wouldn't call this heavily sherried in any way. And then for me, there's some bitterness there, there's some kind of coffees and some dark chocolates, that sort of thing. Let's try on the palate. It's got a really nice mouthfeel. The first sensation, it starts off oddly, it starts off just a touch thinly, but very quickly seems to almost thicken up. Lots of those smokes and those dried fruits coming through. Bags of kind of peppery spiciness. Let's have another little sip. Now again, it's not overly sherried. There's almost kind of like a licorice element to it. Kind of, yeah, like that kind of aniseediness coming from the back end. And it isn't overly kind of fruity or sweet or anything like that that you would usually expect from a kind of sherried whiskey, but it's all about the smoke and the peat for me on this one. It's a really nice, chewy, meaty smoke, which is something that I often get on a Ledaig. The finish isn't overly long, to be fair. It's probably medium-y, but it's very smoky, very aniseedy, kind of licoricey vibes going on there. And it just keeps going on and on and on. Kind of finishes on a bit of a sour note, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a tasting note. Now, for me, I have to say I think this is an exceptional whiskey. It's well up there with some of the things that I really enjoy. Personally, I would prefer it to be probably just a touch higher on ABV. It's still a great one at 46.3, but if it was pushing up to that kind of 48, I'd be really impressed with it, I think. But it's one that I'm going to greatly enjoy, but I don't think I'm going to keep it for a kind of special whiskey. This one will go in my mid-range cabinet, let's say, and I'll be happy to drink this. And when it's gone, I'll be sad that I won't have it anymore, but I'll just move on to the next Ledaig 18 or whatever's coming my way.